Good afternoon, everyone. This is Stuart Blumenthal with ETHOSystems, and we're going to get started in about 10 seconds here. We're waiting for one last person to join us here. Awesome. So I want to welcome everyone. My name is Stuart Blumenthal. I'm the Intacct Practice Director here at ETHOSystems. And today we are going to be talking about the Sage Intacct Interactive Custom Report Writer. Sometimes you'll hear it known as ICRW. And I got the amazing honor to have Adrian here today, to one of our awesome senior consultants who's going to take you through this. Adrian has learned more about ICRW the last several years just because of all the work that we've been doing within the Sage Intacct construction module. And a lot of our reports that we build in that module have to be done within ICRW. So Adrian's put together some amazing tips and tricks, which she'll be going through today. Just a couple quick logistics. The presentation's about 45 minutes. All the phone lines are muted, so sorry. That's the best way to control this. So if you do have any questions, please type them into the questions box. I will be monitoring that as Adrian is presenting today. And if you want to copy this presentation, just put your email into the questions feature and we will get that sent over to you. So without any further ado, I am going to turn it over to you, Adrian.
Thank you, Stuart. Welcome, everyone. I'm, again, Adrian Goddard, and my specialty is report writing. So I'm going to share today my favorite tips and tricks of the product. So here's our agenda. What I would like to do is run through about 7 of my favorite tips, and I'll show you a brief slide, and then we're going to jump into the product so I can really demo each slide. So I think you'll get a lot more out of it that way. Okay, so let's start. The first tip is using the standard reporting library. So when you first go into ICRW, you're going to see this report library button, and you're going to click on it, and you're going to be presented with a list of about 80 standard reports. And this is a great way to quickly create a report instead of going from scratch. You can just copy these reports. Maybe it's about 80% there, and you just have to add a couple of fields. So this is really a great tool. And let's say you just want to learn some formatting or how to create some sort of calculation or some sort of setup technique. It's also a great way to learn instead of creating something completely from scratch. And if you like a report, you can save the report to your environment and use it. So I'd like to go through about 3 reports. So I'm going to jump over to ICRW. So what you do is you come over here to reports, and then we're going to come down here to the interactive custom report. And that's where you're going to see this report library. So click on the report library, and on my screen I've got about 81 reports. As Intacct goes through their releases, they will sometimes add new reports to this list. And let's say, so you can kind of go down, you can see the different modules that are presented here. Maybe you're not subscribed to purchasing, so then you may not see these reports, or maybe time and expense, but most of the reports are available to you. And let's go through 3 of them. So here is the AP vendor aging summary and detail. I really like this one. There's also an AR version. So if this sounds interesting, I'm going to come over here to run. And you'll come up with some sort of report filter. I'm just going to click on view. And I like this report because it's kind of a cool technique where I'm seeing vendors coming down here, and this is in summary. And this happens to be an aging report, but it doesn't have to be an aging. It could just be anywhere where you've got summary and detailed information. And if I click here, then notice on the right-hand side, the detail for that particular vendor will show up. And I can choose a different one, see how it changes. So this is a great technique. I like this report, so take a look at it if you have anything a report that has this type of technique. Okay, another report that I want to show you today is the AR invoices pivot table. So one of the reasons why Intacct added ICRW in the first place is because people were asking about pivot tables, and the regular custom report writer doesn't have that feature. So let's go ahead and take a look at this report. Now we could really spend the whole time just talking about pivot tables. So that's why I'm kind of pointing out the standard report, that if you want to be able to do a pivot table, definitely come and take a look at this. You can see down for the rows, I've got different customers, and then for the columns, I have locations, and I can even come here and expand these columns. So you can see I'm expanding by date, by quarter, by month, and all the way down to the actual specific transactions here. So this is a great report to learn from, to copy from. You can add to it. Okay, and the third standard report that we're going to take a look at is in the general ledger section. Most people will probably need a report like this. It's the GL transactions by journal. So if it's something that I want to add to be able to use, instead of hitting run, I'm going to hit edit. And this report will come up. And the thing I like about this report, it has that drill down capability. So see where you're seeing transaction. This is actually the transaction number. So if you have that type of report that you need to drill down to, definitely take a look and copy this one down to your environment to use it. And towards the end of the demo, I'm going to show you how to do a drill down. But if you did want to use this one, I would just come over here, click on Save As, choose your company that you're using. You can't save into the Intacct library. So choose your company, and I'm going to show you a little technique that I like to do. If my cursor will cooperate, I'm going to put an X and then an AG for my initials. And I'll show you why I like this technique. So when I save it, I'm going to give it that name. Then if I come back to the menu, you'll see that that report that I just added to my environment. So see, I'm out of the standard report library. Now I'm in my environment. These are the reports that I have access to. That report got added to the end of the list here. And the reason why I like it at the end of the list is that way my users know that anytime they see like an X and an AG, that's for me, then they know that that report is still working in process and it's not ready for distribution yet. So, so I like that it's at, and I know where to find it. It's right at the end of the list. So that's a great tip. Okay, so now tip number 2, let's say, in fact, I'm going to show you it from this screen. Let's say if I need to create a report from scratch. So I'm not going to use the report library. I'm going to go to this add button from the interactive report writer. So if I click on the add button, this is what the screen will look like. And it's going to ask me for a reporting area. And if I click on this drop down arrow, there'll be a list of many, many different reporting areas. And if I select one, you can look down here and it'll give me a description of what is in that reporting area. So a reporting area, you can think of it as a view. It's a collection of various tables and fields and related objects. And this is the hardest part of creating a custom report, is knowing what reporting area to use. So I'm going to give you a very big tip. If you want to see a list of all the reporting areas, you're going to go to Help and search for reporting area reference. And I actually put it up on my screen. So this is what it looks like. So It'll have a list by module of all the reporting areas. So the list is quite long. And anytime Intacct does a quarterly release, they might update this area and add more views or more reporting areas to this list. So make sure you keep this handy. Okay, let's move on to the next tip. So now what we're going to do is actually kind of dive in and work on it. We're going to work on a report together. Makes it a lot easier. You'll learn a lot. And the first thing you're going to do is when you open up a new report, you're going to be presented with four different tabs of the report. And the first one is define. And I recommend that all the fields, you take the define tab and add all of your fields for the report to the define tab. So do that first and try to put them in the correct order. And this will save you a ton of time if you add all the fields first to the define tab, because in the refine tab, you can add fields to the refine tab, but the refine tab actually will show you a view. You can create the report as you go and it'll populate the data. So it's much, much easier if you just add the fields to the define tab, so you're not waiting for Intacct to populate the report. And this is also very, very important to make sure before you start editing the report, adding all the fields and doing your formatting, you want to make sure that that you grab the right reporting area. So it's very important to make sure all your fields are there before you spend too much time. So I'm going to run through the rest of these tips in the product. So let's come over here. I've got this detail job cost. And let's come over here. We were at the define tab. Okay, so now I've added all the fields. I've put them in the correct order, and I'll show you actually what the reporting area looks like. So you have these subfolders under the reporting area, and I recommend when you add your fields, let's say like this particular report is a general ledger detail report that has some dimensions in it. So for example, there's a job or a project, there's cost codes, vendors, employees. So anytime you want to use one of those fields, make sure you add the field, if it's a dimension, from the dimensions subfolder. It'll just be so much easier. The prompts will work correctly, sorting will work correctly. So, because you will find that the job ID is also in the attributes folder, but definitely grab it from the dimension folder if it's a dimension field. And then measures is always going to contain all your amounts. And then related objects will be additional fields that are not in the attributes or the dimension subfolders. So, and it's much easier on the define tab to add any kind of sorting. So if you wanted to sort, you can see that here. And here's another really big tip about creating reports is using this filter right here. So you can add a filter by coming over here and creating a filter. And what I did is I actually added 3 jobs to my filter. Now, it of course doesn't have to be jobs. It could be maybe it's basing on vendors and I'm going to put 3 vendors, or maybe a specific GL account number. And the reason why I do that, I put that filter in is that it makes the report creation much quicker because the data set is much, much smaller. And then when I'm finished with the report, I can go ahead and remove that filter. But that will save you a lot of time. Okay, now what our next tip of the day is report formatting. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to be adding logos and doing some formatting here. I'm going to give you a demo of each one of these things because you'll learn a lot better than me just putting it on the slide. But I'm going to show you this last tip is make sure you save often. So I found that sometimes when I'm creating a report, there's not an automatic save, and all of a sudden it'll freeze and I've lost my work. So I recommend saving your report as much as possible. So I'm going to show you these. Okay, so we're going to do most of our formatting from the Refine tab. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is in the title, let's add a logo. Now, the logo first needs to be available to the custom report writer or the interactive custom report writer. So the way you do that is let's actually go into, I'm going to open up a different, duplicate the tab and come in here, and you're going to go to company and subscriptions and run down here until you get to interactive. Click on configure, and this is where you add the logo. So it has to be available first. So you add it here first, and then once you do that, then I can come in here to the title and click on the pencil. And where it says logo, I can select the image, click on custom images, and then my logo will be here. So if you come into this screen and it's blank, it's because you need to add it to interactive first. So click on OK. It gives me a little preview here, and I notice that, see how my title for my report is right on top of the logo? So to fix that, I can come here to format the logo, drop down this menu, and let's change the right padding to 20. Say OK, and there, puts a little space in there. That looks a lot better. And say done. Okay, then let's talk about customizing this header line. We usually have to do that. Most of it's been customized already, just to save time. But if you look at these 3 columns right here, see how I've got this vendor name kind of after the name of the field and job right here. If you want to change that, I'll show you how to do it. So from the table section, I come over here and click on this pencil and come down here to vendor ID, click on the gear. And this is very important with the gear. You'll see that I do have some other options that you think, oh, I should probably go into this format heading if I'm changing the header. But my tip is to click on column properties for most of your changes, because column properties will bring up this great menu of many different tabs. You can do a lot in column properties. So style is usually related to the actual data that's showing up in the column, where column format is more of the header. So in column format, I can come in here, I can customize the heading, and I can remove vendor, say OK. So see that? That looks a lot better. Same thing for job ID. Come over here, click on the gear, column properties, custom headers, remove that job. And then what if I wanted to also format what the job ID looks like? I can come in here to customize that. I can change the size of the font. I can change the font, make it bold, underline. I can add a color that shows up well. So let's do that. Add the color. And another nice tip here is click on this additional formatting options. You can actually change the width of the column. And I recommend doing the width of the column in the header and not in the actual data. It seems to work better that way. Okay, and I click on OK. And now you're going to see that color change. And then what about, look at this amount. It's missing the comma here. So I'll show you how to do that. So come down here, same type of thing. Click on the gear, go to column properties, And this time I'm going to go to data format. I'm going to override, put a number of decimal places, comma separator. Okay, that looks a lot better. And usually we're always formatting the date. Let's say I really don't want that four-digit year. Come down to transaction date, column properties, data tab, and change that to that one. I like that one. Okay, that looks good. I like that. Okay, next formatting is we're going to do some conditional highlights. This really gives it some pizzazz. And here's the amount. And let's say we want to say any amount that's 2,000 or greater. I want to change it to a green color, or maybe you shade it or something like that. So take amount, click on the gear, column properties. Now we're going to do the conditional format. Add a column, we're doing it to the amount. And we're going to change this to greater than or equal to. Put in a value of 2,000. Say OK. And maybe the color is green. And you could do maybe a less than or equal to an amount, and maybe that one's red. So, but this one looks pretty. There you go. All right, now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do a calculation. And see how this cost code is, it looks very nice because it's got the cost code, a dash, and then it's got the name of the cost code. But over here for vendor, I have vendor ID separate than vendor name. So what happens if I want to put that together? You can come over here for the calculation and you click on this icon and we can call it vendor. You're just putting whatever name you want. So I usually keep those the same. And then in this calculation box, I can come here and select column, makes it really easy. And I'm going to select the vendor ID first. And then this concatenate icon here, click on that. And let's say I wanted to put 2 dashes between the vendor ID and the vendor name. That's the syntax. You put single quotes around it. And then I have to remember to put concatenate again. And then simply select the vendor name. So this technique of doing a calculation, maybe you're not doing, let's say you want to add 2 columns together or subtract or do multiplication. You can use, that's what all of these buttons down here are for. So this concatenate formula is something you'll use all the time. But of course, if your formulas are more sophisticated, you can add something together, divide it by this, it's a percentage. You also can have the ability to use this button right here that we have functions available to you. So if you search the help, you can search for example functions. And so you can get quite sophisticated here. That's another advantage of the interactive custom report writer over the regular custom report writer, is if your report requires sophisticated calculations, you definitely want to use this product. So, okay, so I put those 2 fields together. I'm going to say okay. And if there was an error, then it would have not let me continue. So, but you can see it put the field here at the end of the report. I can simply just drag that over here. Okay, so you can see it put the vendors together. And then if I don't really need to see these fields, you can delete them. But what I'm going to do is come here and I'm going to exclude them. And under the gear down here, you can hide columns. But the reason why I'm going to exclude them is because I want to use them in a user prompt later on in the demonstration. So that's why I'm going to exclude the columns. Okay, that is looking pretty good. I'm going to say done. And then remember, one of my tips is make sure you save this report just in case, just in case. Okay, moving right along. The next thing we're going to do, this is a good one. We're going to add subtotals and totals and grand totals to our report. So this came up for one of my clients. So I spent a lot of time, so this is a great tip, that if you want to use subtotals, multiple layers of subtotals and grand totals, you want to make sure you add the subtotals to one of the columns, because you can put, like, for example, this vendor up here as a section header, but then all of a sudden you will lose the ability to do the subtotals and the grand totals. So you'll have to watch that. So I found the better technique is to just put it within one of the columns. Okay, so let me show you that technique. We're going to come here and we're going to open up the pencil again, the edit mode. And let's say I want the subtotal for job. And so you click on this subtotal button here, and I'm going to say after. So notice all of a sudden for this job, now I have a subtotal. For this job, I have a subtotal, no grand totals yet. So those are just subtotals. And let's say I also want to do it for vendor. Same thing, click on this sum, put it after. And now I have subtotals by the vendors. And then if I want that grand total at the bottom, here's the trick. You have to come up here. It's not in the gear. It's up here. You right click and you'll see this show row level grand total and put after there. And now you'll see that grand total pop up here at the bottom. Okay, that's a good tip. So make sure you keep that one handy. And then what am I going to do? Save. Okay, tip number 6 is setting up those filters and runtime prompts. So on this report in the example, what I would like to do is create 3 prompts, one for the transaction date, one for the job or project, and one for the vendor. So my tip of the day is to make sure if the field that you're prompting is, or filtering is a dimension, make sure you grab just the ID from the dimension. And that's why I told you to make sure you always add from the dimension subfolder, is to be able to do prompts correctly. So if I grab just the job ID, notice Intacct recognizes that this is a dimension. It'll automatically show it as a job and a job group. So you can use this feature if you're using groups, or this could be project or vendors or customers. And then on the box that it displays for the user, it'll automatically put the ID and the description here. And then the next thing I will show you how to do. Let's say we do select these 3 things, then to display what the user picked for the prompt in the report selection. So you can see I said transaction date, it's March through June, and then they chose a couple of projects and a vendor. And I know this looks a little funny with how it displays the date. That's the way, I'm hoping eventually you can change that formatting. As of today, you can't change the formatting, but at least it displays it, because this is so useful to the user printing the report. So, and then I want to show you this find. When you do have a display box, you can use the Control F and you can find values within the choice box. So I will definitely show you this one because this is a great one. So let's go back to our report and we are going to go to prompts, and the transaction date is actually already here. but I want to add one thing to it. So I'm going to edit the transaction date. And since I want to, so here's the transaction date and saying it's between, and I want it to pull up the calendar. And I'm going to open up this options. And there's something called a presentation variable. And this allows it to show on the report subheader. So I can type here trans date. I'm just going to name it, could be anything. Say okay. And then let's say I wanted to do job or project. So remember, I'm not going to select the concatenated one. I'm going to select the one that's from a dimension, the job ID. And I'm going to go ahead and accept that choice list. I like that. Open up the box, include all values. And again, I'm going to set this presentation variable. And let's put job here. And create one more. And that was vendor ID again, selecting the dimension. And create all, presentation variable. And this was vendor. Okay. Okay, so there's the 3. And go ahead and save that. And then I'm going to cheat a little. I already typed this up. So this is the syntax that I can put in my subheader or my subtitle. And you can see that this is just text that I'm typing, report selection, transaction date, and then this symbol at, and then the squiggly, here's the name of the presentation variable, and then end squiggly. So those are my 3 presentation variables that I put up, and I can just copy that. And then for my report, I simply go to the Refine tab, and then in my title here, click on the pencil for the title. You're going to see, oh, I have a subtitle here. So I'm going to paste that in and click on Done. And you're going to see what it looks like. So there's the presentation variables. I'm going to click on Save. And then I'm going to open up a new tab because you can, from the prompt section, you can view what the report would look like with those prompts. But I found that sometimes for whatever reason, when you view the report through this button versus what the user is looking at, sometimes it's different. So I don't ever do it this way. I come here in a different window, go back to Reports Interactive, and open up this report. So let's run this one. Make sure I have the right one, run. Then here are my prompts. And so I can put in a date, 03. Okay, my date's a little old. Or I can use the calendar too if I want to. Then notice that when I chose the dimensions, it automatically knew that it's a dimension for these 2 prompts. So for the job, you're going to look at this. For the job, I can come here. I can select the job from the list. But what happens if I have thousands and thousands of jobs or vendors or whatever it might be? This is where I have that Control F. This is a great feature. It comes up here for a find, and I can actually type in part of, in this case, a job number, and it doesn't even have to be the beginning. I'm going to type in the middle and see how it finds that text, and then I can just select from there, and I can select. Let's see, maybe I don't want all of those. And maybe that one. Okay, that looks good. So select those 3 jobs, and same with vendor. see that search box is still open, so I can come here. And again, I can just type part of the vendor number or even the name. If I type in part of the name, it'll find it. So click on that, say done, close the search box, click on view. And now my report should be filtered based upon what the user entered. And then I can say, you know what, I filtered it maybe too much. So I can definitely come back here to customize, remove that vendor, view it again. Oh, that's looking pretty good there. And from here, you also have the ability to export the report, and you can export to, say, a PDF or Excel. You can also add this report to a dashboard. You can email it. So a lot of different options there. Okay, so now report's looking good. I'm going to come back here to the report. And now we're going to get into my very last tip. And I'm going to run through it pretty quick just because I know we're probably running short on time. So, but this is the drill down. So that means in this case, I want to drill down on the amount field. And actually, since it's a general ledger detail report, I want to drill down to the journal entry. So you might be drilling down to a purchase order or some project information, but this is what we're going to do. Okay, so I'm going to open the report, and we're going to click on edit here. Okay, and again, I want to put it on the amount. So see, right now my amounts are not in blue, they're not drillable. So the first thing you're going to do is add the drilled, add the drilled field to the column. I already added it ahead of time to save time. But what you would do is come over here to the reporting area and click on the search. And you actually just type in the word drill. If you type in the word drill, you'll be presented with several fields that you can drill. So this one happened to be drilling down to the GL transaction. And big tip here is if you know you want your report to have that ability to drill, make sure you search for those drill fields on the reporting area, because it may not exist. So you want to make sure that drill field exists in that reporting area before you add all your columns and before you format. Okay, so I'm going to add the field. I'm going to hide it. And if I want the drilled field to be on the amount, then I'm going to click on the year, go to column properties, and click on interaction. Change this to drill, and this will be action links. Click on the add, and then here just type in the word drill. And then there's these little people running. So select on the second one, select existing action. And then I want to change the folder to the Intacct library. And then select the little person again, say okay. And then for this value here, I'm going to select that and change this to a column value. And click on this down arrow, and from here, this one's really important. I want to make sure I select the field that I just added, which is the GL transaction. It's not the amount. Some people make that mistake. It's actually this one. Change that to fixed and hidden, okay, and then say okay. Make sure you select this to not pop up and say okay. Now look what happened. All of a sudden, all the amounts have this drill. So I can go ahead, select one, and it will open up the journal entry. And there it is. Isn't that cool? That's a great one. You'll use that one a lot. Okay, that was my last tip. I really appreciate it. I hope you got a lot out of all the tips, and I'm going to hand it back over to Stuart.
Awesome. I have learned several things. So now I know how to fix my reports with my drill downs now. So thank you. I should have learned that originally. So great job. Thank you so much for putting that together. So just a couple last minute logistics. First of all, I don't see any questions in the chat. And if there are any questions, please feel free to ask them along the way. We kind of have been monitoring it. It's been very quiet, which means Adrian's done an amazing job. Second thing, we here at Ethos have been continuously doing webinars, and we've got the whole year planned out. Very proud of our team for that. But the next couple webinars that we're going to be teaching the next one is going to be on March 17th. It's going to be importing tips and tricks. That's going to be done by Carol, and she's going to be showing you how some of the tips and tricks of doing some imports. On the 14th of April, we're going to be Sue's going to be teaching us how to work smart in Sage Intacct and some of the cool little cheats to making your life a little bit easier in the product. So I'm excited for that one. And then on the 12th of May, we're going to be talking about the ACH process and setting that up within the system, because everyone's wants to get paid by ACH today. No one wants to cut checks, and this will actually make your life a lot easier. So that's what we're focusing on. If there's any other classes you would like, please let us know. One other last piece of information is that next Friday, the 18th of February, Sage will be releasing its update, the Q1 update. There's lots of cool features in there, and we'll probably do a quick little webinar early March to go over the new features with you. So with that, if there's any questions, feel free to email myself. Also, you can email Adrian, who is on the front cover. You have her email address, and we will be happy to answer any questions you have, or do any follow-up issues that you might have. Other than that, again, thank you, Adrian. You put a lot of effort and time into this. We really appreciate the professionalism and the amount of knowledge in here. You did an amazing job, so thank you very much. And with that, I think we're going to call it a day. Have a great one and take care.